Hello, YouTubers, back with part 3 of my testimony. Okay, um, Good Friday of that year, Charles was had a compulsion to call me. He just felt like he really should call me, and he called directory assistance, and then came up with reasons not to call, like it might not really be me, it might not be the right number. He doesn't have the money to call all the way from. He was in Canada. He tried to use money as an excuse. And so he didn't call. But the funny thing was that Good Friday was a very difficult time for me. I was running from God so hard. And I wanted to go to Good Friday services, but I didn't. Part of me wanted to go and part of me didn't want to go. I was scared. Charles, I found out about his phone call the following week, and he pointed out to me that wasn't it strange that him, the most fundamental of all of my Christian friends, was asked to call me and not one of my more liberal friends. My more liberal Christian friends like Jim didn't have any compulsion to call me that night. Okay, I did have to attend Easter services because I was taking a Christian history class, and we had to go to Catholic and Orthodox Easter services and write reports on them. And my more liberal friend Jim asked me if it wasn't funny that I was having to attend church services while running from God, and asked me if there were any mistakes, any accidents, sorry. During the month of April, I was praying on and off to Jehovah, but I still didn't trust him, and that was a major hang-up for me. And Jim gave me an analogy to try and help me understand. It was like hanging on a branch over a pit, and he said that he can't teach me how to let go of that branch. I just had to trust. And through that, I learned that we have to commit to God before we really get to know him, and only later do we learn more about him and build trust with him. So I used a technique that I learned, visualization. I visualized myself and the goddess on one side of a doorway and Jesus on the other side. And it took quite a while before I was able to take Jesus' hand through the door, and even longer before I could finally step through the door. But stepping through that door was a major point of trust for me, that God went from being on the negative side of my trust scale to at least being neutral. Okay, my conversion occurred on May 3rd of 1996. I realized the day before, on May 2nd, that I was searching for love more than truth, the love that I had felt at the concert that night. Truth could come later, but the love at that concert was... I wanted that. I yearned for it. And I told Charles about this. And in response to me, on May 3rd, I got the following email from him. Now, this is a rather lengthy email from him, so bear with me while I read it, because this was a very important email that I received from him. On May 3rd, Charles wrote, "I see your heart fighting against your will. I have felt God, says your heart, and I want him. I want to experience that love again. The will responds, no, I won't lay aside what I've found in Wicca. While the will suppresses the heart, it cannot eradicate the longing. I certainly encourage you to speak and write to Christians about this Jehovah that you do not know, but in the end it will come down to the fight between your will and your heart. Your heart will continue longing for Jehovah, and your will continue to resist. You have two options: shut God out or let him in. Wicca will get you so far to God, but no further, since you are doing the active part. You now have a situation where God is doing the active part. inviting you into that close communion with Him. If Wicca could provide what God really offers, intimate union with the divine, you would not have this longing. It cannot. Only accepting the invitation for the indwelling of God can fill that void. I'm trying to tell you what I've found, and I can see how strongly your heart is seeking it. From my heart to yours, let Him in. And so, about 6:45 p.m. on that Friday evening, 4 years to the day from my dedication to the pagan path, I dedicated my life to God. I want to share with you 2 Bible verses, just short Bible verses dealing with salvation. The first is Romans 10:13, that says, "Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." The second is Ephesians 2, verses 8 through 9, that says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast." Now, of course, the story doesn't end with my conversion. I didn't give up my pagan ways right away. It was a slow process. In June, we're up to 1996 now, in June of that year, I went to the Ancient Ways Pagan Festival. I'm not sure why I went, except that I probably figured it would be my last pagan fling before really getting serious with God. I arrived Wednesday in the early afternoon, and by Thursday night I was on a payphone to Charles. He advised me to go home, and I refused. Charles said, "Well, if you won't go home, at least talk to God." And I asked Charles, will he listen to me? I mean, look at how bad I'm being right now. Will God listen? And Charles said, just go talk to God about it. And so about 2 to 3 hours later, I went out to the oak tree behind the Meadow Building, which was a meeting place, and there were chairs set up there. I sat down in one of the chairs, and I began talking to God. And all of a sudden, I had a strong feeling of His presence very near me. My reaction, paradoxically, was fear and anger. I walked off because God was simply being too loving. Well, first I told Him to get lost, and He wouldn't. And so I finally walked off because He was being too loving. But after that, for the rest of the festival, I had a sense that He was very near me. He was just waiting for me to come back to Him, and He wasn't angry. I learned from that He gives us what we need, and He meets us where we are. I'm reminded of the parable of the lost sheep and the lost coin in Luke 15, where He seeks and saves the lost. God is patient. He works with us, and He doesn't just smack you down when you mess up. My baptism occurred on August 24th, 1996. I wanted to be baptized, and I was excited. But I was told by Bruce, my InterVarsity leader at school, that he wouldn't baptize me unless I renounced paganism. I hadn't been to a ritual in a couple of months, but now I had to make the hard choice, and I'm glad that he did that. It wasn't easy for him to say, and it wasn't easy for me to hear, but he put Jesus first, and that's the most important thing. Okay. There's one more part to put in here, and I will end here since I'm over 9 minutes now, and so I will see you with part 4, which will be the last part. Thanks.